Fox News alert millions of American families.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm George Thomas. We begin with the latest.
Here in St. John's Hospital, there are certainly a lot of efforts here at the LAPD and all across the South.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm George Thomas. We begin with the latest in the coronavirus pandemic. Number of cases here in the U.S.
And we are live. I am joined by Clint of Liberty Lockdown Podcast. How are you doing today, Clint?
I'm good, Jacob. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. Honestly, it was a pleasure to get you on. I think Dave Smith said it recently that you've actually become one of the foremost voices in the liberty movement. And I would have to agree with that.
Very, very high praise coming from a guy that I basically idolize. So,
right.
Yeah, believe me, I listened to that 10, 15 times. I was like, one of the most important voices in the liberty movement. I was like, Jesus Christ, what high praise, man. But he's a great guy and a great speaker and a better person. So it's I feel honored to be looked at in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I've been listening to your podcast long before I even wanted to get into podcasting.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so it was actually really cool to be able to get you on. So let's start. What really led you to the liberty movement itself? Like, what was your aha moment?
I didn't have one. I was taught as a kid about our founding fathers. So my dad was a libertarian back in the 1970s, and when I was born in the 80s, he just indoctrinated me into it. So I didn't really have an aha moment. I would say if I did have an aha moment, it would be after WMDs in Iraq and, the fallout after 9/11, the TSA, DHS, the entire infringement on every aspect of our liberty, as well as multiple unconstitutional wars. I mean, I don't think you can get more radicalized into liberty than when all of that transpires in your young adulthood. It was horrific. And then the lockdowns came and it was just like, oh, okay, well, now the libertarian label is feeling a little bit shaky. I may be more of an ANCAP at this point. And that's kind of the arc that I was on.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting watching, especially the National Libertarian Party just be silent at the start of lockdowns. It was, I don't even know. It definitely radicalized me more. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think what it shows you is the same realization that we had about the Republican Party years ago when they, started to greenlight bills that were spending trillions of dollars. Obviously, Trump having the declaration of national emergency that allowed for all the state governors to lock people down. Like, you don't have a real political solution to this. Like, that's my honest belief. You have rhinos and you have linos. You have libertarians in name only, and I think that we discovered that there were many in positions of power within the LNC that didn't believe in liberty, or at least didn't believe in it in a way that could actually accomplish anything at all. So this is why the Mises Caucus is here now, and this is why we are, the radical Ron Paul revolution folks are taking over, and not a moment too soon. I mean, we have not a moment to spare, genuinely.
I completely agree. I was a little too young to really be a part of the first Ron Paul revolution. I was too young to vote. Luckily, Ron Paul came across my feed, and I was still able to listen to him, and so I was pretty lucky that way. But now, actually being involved with Revolution 2.0, it's pretty exciting, honestly, because we're actually getting things done. People are keeping their heads down and working despite all the smear campaigns.
Yes, yeah, that's the thing is that the cancel culture narrative and the environment that we exist in, like if you value what we're about, which is like nothing less than saving human liberty on Earth right now, you can't be worried about labels. You can't be worried about what the corporate narrative is going to be about you or your people or your movement. You have to have a guiding light in front of you that basically blocks out all distractions. And that's how I feel about it. Like a lot of people are concerned about my privacy, my safety, all sorts of stuff. And I'm just like, look, I don't have privacy. I don't have safety right now. So who gives a shit? Like I'm going to risk whatever I have to try and salvage what little liberty I have left. And that's why I got involved. That's why I think that it's incumbent upon anybody that sees the world the way I do to do whatever they can in their day-to-day life to actually try and remedy some of this stuff that is tearing us apart. And I know it sounds blackpilling, but I don't take it that way. I don't take it as like this is a reason for pessimism. Like you can look at all of the problems that exist on Earth right now and conclude it's hopeless, or you can conclude that it's vital, that you have no choice, that you have to be involved, that you have to speak out, that you have to tell the truth. And that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, that's the whole reason I got involved. For a long time, I was a little L, I guess. I wasn't involved with the party, or I voted Libertarian.
I was the exact same, man. Yep.
And yeah, the course that I see everything going down, I just see it getting worse and worse. And I see nobody else standing up to do anything. And it's like, okay, well, courage is contagious. So
right.
One person will stand up and a few more will, and then a few more and a few more. So that's kind of where I got.
Exactly. And I feel honored to have, because I am a little older than you, that I was able to witness the Ron Paul revolution firsthand. And then now to be, one of the spokespeople for Ron Paul 2.0, and I view Dave as that. So the fact that I get to be involved and help guide this thing means the world to me. It is the honor of my lifetime to be in this movement at this moment when it matters most. And I am just grateful every day that I get to get up and do things like this, that I get to get up and talk to people like you that are seeing the severity of the situation similarly and are responding in kind. Like that's what we need. And I think anything less is failing, not just yourself, but it's failing your progeny, your family. It's the weight of it is huge. But the weight of tyranny is heavier. So you might as well just launch in, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't want to be caught on the sidelines, not doing anything. And people ask me, well, what did you do? It's like,
exactly.
I want to actually be able to say that I tried. So at
exactly.
the very least.
Yeah. If you're lucky enough to have grandkids one day, do you want to look to them in the gulag and say, Grandpa had an opportunity to stand up and talk out and speak out about all of the insanity that was transpiring when he was a young man, and he didn't do shit. And that's why we're in prison right now. It's like, no, I'm not going to be that guy. Like maybe I'll end up in the prison with my grandkid, but I'm gonna have a story to tell him if we're allowed to talk.
You know what? I read an article the other day. I'll have to find it and send it to you. It's pretty funny. Somebody was pointing out that this generation doesn't have the work ethic to build the gulags for their utopia.
Well, that's largely true. Unfortunately, they find ways, because they're able to print money, they can get people to do stuff. So I wouldn't bank on the lack of work ethics saving us.
Yeah, well, those people that are screeching or reeing at everyone are definitely going to be some of the first victims. end up in these places. So
yeah,
the useful idiots, it happens in every regime.
That'll be the only silver lining in all this, is that the people that thought that being quiet and playing along with the woke games would save them, they'll be right there with us. So I honestly, though, I'm not planning on seeing that future. Like,
Yeah, me either.
My entire goal with what I'm doing is to make sure that that doesn't come to pass. And maybe I'm delusional. I don't care. You know, like
That's all right.
I'm gonna do everything in my power, and if that's enough, then great. And if it's not enough, well, you know, I gave it my absolute best. I am pouring my heart, my soul into this, and I will not stop. So that's all there is to it. We'll see. We'll let the chips fall where they may.
So one question I wanted to ask, it's a simple question, but I always like getting everyone's individual opinion. Why is liberty so important? Why does it matter so much?
I mean, for me personally, it was just, I didn't like to be controlled. I didn't like to be told what to do as a young kid. I didn't like teachers and even parental guidance to a large extent. I was just very rebellious from a young age. So for me, it's just about having the choice to do what I see as best. And ultimately, as an individualist, I think that everybody making their own personal decision for their own best interest, or at least their perceived best interest, creates the best society. And so, like, even though my entire philosophy is based around the individual, if you enable and empower the individual to pursue what they're passionate about, you create a world and a collective that is far more beautiful than anything that the central planners can concoct. So that's why I believe in it so strongly. I think that's why the American experiment was so successful, and also created the greatest empire and the largest government in all of human history. So it's a double-edged sword, of course, but I think that the starting place for human flourishing is liberty. And if that's not enough to get you motivated, I don't know what is. You know, like that's everything to me.
Yeah, I can agree. I mean, I never understood the idea of how I could make a better choice for your life than you could. I've never understood that.
I mean, there's certainly circumstances with, like, drug addiction and things like that, where it might be the case, but I think by and large, 95% of people, you know, making their own decision based off of their own perception of the world, ultimately creates a better environment for, you know, the economy, culture, everything. And to me, there's just no debate. You know, it's like, you can look at all the countries that have tried collectivist central planning type models, and you can compare and contrast that to any nations that tried to give their people the capacity to make their own decisions, and which ones dominate, you know, which ones do the best. And ultimately, it's unsustainable to have central planners that are trying to make all this happen, and we know that for a fact. So I don't even understand why it's a debate. I don't understand how people that value their own personal bodily autonomy on the left don't see that ultimately their belief in a large governmental structure will injure that. You know, it'll eventually do away with it entirely. And I think a lot of people on the left are waking up to that, and I'm grateful for it. It's about damn time.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've actually been going around to some of the conventions for the LP. How have those been going? Are they ultimately a white pill, or are we actually getting things done?
Oh yeah, it's a huge white pill. I've only been to one in person so far at the LP Florida convention. I also spoke to the Minnesota Mises Caucus convention via Zoom yesterday, and that went really well. It's a huge white pill, man. In Florida, we had, I don't know, 150 people maybe. Dave and I got to do a panel together, which was a real bucket list moment for myself. And afterwards, I got voted to be a national delegate out of the state of Florida in Reno, to be able to decide on who the chair, co-chair, other things like that will be at national in Reno in May or June or whenever. So, but the real white pill is just meeting the people. And, you know, I remember when I looked into the Libertarian Party back in the, you know, after 9/11 in the early mid 2000s, And honestly, like, I didn't relate to the people that were involved. Like, they were kind of hippie-ish, kind of leftist leaning. And not that I have any problem with people like that. I think they're great too, but they weren't like me, you know? They weren't just interested in like capitalism, free markets, peace, prosperity. Like they had their own worldview that was a little bit different from mine. I don't feel like that's the case anymore. I mean, the people that were at the Florida convention are extremely similar to me, and they view the situation almost identically. They're very motivated. They're very positive, even though we all see the the world as kind of falling apart. And afterwards, we had a very spirited debate about whether or not we would put Florida secession on the platform for Florida, and it ended up passing. I got to get up and give a couple minute, you know, rant about why I thought it was valuable, and it was just an amazing experience when that passed, and everyone cheered. It was like, all right, we are doing something now. You know, the days of milk toast garbage messaging are done. Like we are going for it, and I'm thrilled that I'm going to be doing Connecticut and Ohio and Texas and possibly Massachusetts. You know, I'm going to be doing a bunch of these state conventions in person, giving 30-minute speeches where I just get to go off and really try and fire people up. And I think that it's going to be probably some of the best experiences of my life. So I'm very grateful and looking forward to it.
So most of my audience is actually non-libertarian, from what I've been able to gather. And do you want to give just a rundown of what the Mises Caucus is and like the whole goal behind the movement?
Well, if they're at all familiar with Ron Paul, the way I view the Mises Caucus is that it's just Ron Paul and all of his acolytes that are now carrying on his legacy. If they're not familiar with Ron Paul, basically it's just it's about free market capitalism, not this crony capitalism that we exist under currently. It's about being anti-interventionist and trying to avoid war at all costs. It has some aspects of social conservatism, but not in terms of like governmental laws. It's just more of a cultural vibe where many of them are more religious leaning, but not all of them. I mean, I'd say maybe 50-50. So yeah, it's the Mises Caucus is Michael Heiss and Dave Smith kind of brought it to prominence, but that's really all it is. It's just the Ron Paul Revolution 2.0. That's to me, it's as simple as that.
So that the emergence of the Mises Caucus is actually why I ended up getting involved in the LP at all.
Yeah, me too.
That was yeah, right. That's what I've heard from most people. What do you say to the people, the anti-Mises people? Obviously, it seems to be a minority within the LP.
Well, it wasn't, but it is now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you say to those people now?
Well, if they're anti, I think that they may be on the wrong side of history. I don't think that they actually will get along with us very well. But if they're just skeptics of the Mises Caucus, I would encourage you to listen to me. You know, listen to my show, Liberty Lockdown, or listen to Dave. Listen to what we're actually saying. Don't listen to the narratives about us. And if you hated Ron Paul, yeah, you'll probably hate me. I don't know many libertarians that I, consider real libertarians that hated Ron Paul. So I don't understand the hate. I think that it's a total mistake. If your priority is, identitarianism and racial grievances and things like that, that's not our priority. It's not that we're racist at all. It's just that human liberty affects all of us. So dividing us by our skin color is anathema. It's completely counter to what our belief system is, and it just seems as if it's a waste of time to focus on it. So that's the main reason that there are anti people in the Libertarian Party, is that they really focus on bigotry and racism, and that being the most important thing in our lifetimes. And I just couldn't disagree more. Yes, racism is awful, but comparing that to state power and the tyranny that we're experiencing the death of the dollar, the death of the empire of the United States, like all of these things are so much bigger. The death of human liberty, the fact that we can't speak freely, the fact that they'll censor us everywhere we go, the fact that they're infringing on 2A very aggressively. I mean, if you see all of that and you conclude racism is the biggest problem in the world today, like I don't know what to tell you. Like I just like I don't know what you're seeing in the world that makes you feel that way. But I hope you see the light before it's too late.
Well, and at least the way I understand it is liberty in its true form is actually going to promote true diversity.
Of course.
I mean, allowing people to be who they are without the threat of government force, coercion, the threat of fraud. It's going to allow for the things that a lot of these people are calling for in the first place, but to naturally happen, and it's not going to be forced like we see a lot coming through Hollywood, or diversity hires, diversity quotas, and all these things, and that's all forced, and it seems fake and disingenuous.
It is. That's the whole issue with it, is that there's no authenticity to their efforts to diversify. Like, even if you see these remakes of movies where they convert the person from a man to a woman or white to black or whatever, you always come away feeling as if, well, this is obviously not about actual inclusion of all people. This is just like, it's so forced, it's ugly, it's disingenuous, it makes you feel bad for the people that got those roles. You're like don't you want to get the job because you're the best at it? I mean, ultimately I believe in meritocracy. I think it's tragic if someone gets turned down their job because of their skin color, because they're even though they're the best candidate available. I think that's wrong. But in a true free market where ultimately you are trying to make the most money possible, or reach the most people possible, you wouldn't have this issue. So if we were to strike at the heart of this, which is ESG, which is environmental social governance, where they're trying to get CEOs to do the bidding of woke nutcases, you could probably remedy most of this and actually do it in a way that's authentic, that is inclusionary, but for the right reasons. That the person, regardless of how they look or their upbringing, is the best person for the job. And that's my belief system. I thought that was a very progressive way of viewing the world, honestly. And now I am looked at as, some regressive for it. And I'm not going to go along with it. I think it's nonsense.
Yeah, it's, I always look at the city that I live in, and, it's on the freedom index, it's probably not the highest, it's no free state or anything, but,
right.
People here actually have the ability to be who they are. And we have a very diverse city. And it's just interesting when you can see things that are forced versus natural diversity of thought and opinion and lifestyle. And it usually comes together in a very beautiful way when it's just natural. And it's effortless. There's no force behind it. And it's one of the most beautiful things is seeing that actually play out in real life. And it didn't come at the barrel of a gun.
Well, this is the truly tragic nature of this, is that when inclusion is forced, it creates resentment. It creates the very human response that you're trying to snuff out, which is racism. And that is not the world I want to live in. I don't want to live in a world where white people are turned away from job opportunities because of their skin color, which then breeds resentment within them. I don't want to see that. I like it when, it's regardless of how you look, if you're the best for the job, you get it. Because if that's the case, sure, you may have some resentment, but the resentment isn't going to be based off of the person who got the job skin color, and we're basically starting the cycle over. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm crazy and that I'm the only person that sees this, is that if you start to exclude people based off their skin color, even if they're white, you're going to create the very natural human response of resentment. And oftentimes that resentment will fester and ultimately arise in the form of racism. I don't want to see that at all. Like that, we were making so much progress when I was a young, when I was a kid, when I was a young man. It really felt as if I was friends with people of all different walks of life, and none of us. I mean, if we even identified the differences amongst us, it was to joke about it. It was to clown around, and I think that that's a much better way to live. To be able to talk openly and joke about our differences, that brings people together. When you're afraid of discussing it, it divides people, and it makes it so that people are afraid to be around people that don't look like themselves. I have no interest in going back to that way of looking at the world, and the fact that the quote unquote woke inclusionary class are the ones that are bringing this about is both predictable and tragic, and I pray that we turn around soon.
Yeah, it's so let me get this straight. You're telling me segregated graduations are probably not the best idea?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh man, when I first saw the news of some of these things, segregated dorms, and for the people calling for it as if that is, it's like they're making the choice this time, so it's somehow virtuous.
Right.
I don't know where the disconnect intellectually is there. The cognitive dissonance is so strong.
I don't know either, man. I don't either. It's just, it is regressive by its very nature. I mean, it just is. And while I'm not a progressive, I mean, in the true definition of the term, it's regressive. We are regressing towards a divided populace. And maybe that's the natural arc of human history. I don't know. But it seems to me as if it's largely driven by the government and a real insidious kind of festering wound that exists in our culture that that if we don't go to the root of it and try and heal that, it's only going to get worse. And I don't have any interest in allowing that to happen. Like I don't want to be looked at as a bad person because of my skin color. The same way I never wanted to look at someone else and feel like they were a bad person because of their skin color. And automatically, because I even talk about this, some people will say, "Ooh, poor white man, so concerned. The shoes on the other foot." Da 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 da. I just want you to reflect on that and realize that you are doing the exact same thing that they want you to. That they want us to be divided, and you're playing right into it. And this vengeance politics, where it's like, well, because Clint's great grandfather may have had some unwoke viewpoints, it's about time that his progeny pays the price. It's like, this is nonsense. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about?
It's your turn. It's your turn to go through it.
Yeah, and that is not, that path leads only to darkness. And I just, for everybody listening, please reconsider. If you think that this is ultimately healing racial wounds in this country, you could not be further from the truth. I mean, it is absolutely going to result in the thing that you think that you're helping. So reflect on that, please.
Yeah, it seems like the double-edged sword of vengeance. You might get what you're seeking, but at what cost?
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't think they're going to get what they're seeking. That's the problem. Is that because if they actually want, equality and all this stuff that they talk about, which I don't think they want it, but just playing along, it's not going to create that. I mean, you're going to create bitterness and anger and political reactionaries that try and push the Republican into some sort of, white nationalist type movement. Like, this stuff, it's all a teeter-totter. Like, and you guys have jumped on the other end of the teeter-totter so hard that when it snaps back, it's going to be hideous. And as I've said, I am all about, forgiveness. Like, I want to let the wounds of our past when it comes to racial inequality and the treatment of people based off of, religion or skin color to heal. I do not want to, via vengeance for those past ills, create them on the other side. And now we're just going back and forth. And I mean, that's how you end up in wars. That's how you could potentially end up in race wars and things like that. I mean, if anyone wants that, like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
It's just
seriously.
It just seems crazy.
You know, I've gotten to the point just reading through history that I'm pretty sure the woke movement as we know it is a marketing campaign.
I think it's a Marxist marketing campaigin, but yes.
Yeah, well, most definitely. I mean, so there was, I'm not sure if you know who Edward Bernays is. Yeah, and his freedom of torches that he promoted at the women's suffragette movement because it was at the time bad for women to smoke in public. And I just thought that was genius. Freedom of, or torches of freedom. And
oh wow, I did not. I now that you say it, I remember that story, but I had forgotten it.
And so, you know, you see during
that's where he marketed cigarettes to the suffragettes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, like from a marketing campaign, that's just genius. Like you play on these social justice concerns, these movements, but you turn it into a marketing campaign. I think that's why you see all of these massive corporations go woke, you know, during the month of June for Pride. And it's like, you can't tell me you really think these massive corporations actually care about any of this. You can't. Like, I don't believe 1 second of this.
I agree. I mean, but it's actually more nefarious than that, because it's not just a marketing campaign. It's also via ESG, which is environmental social governance, which was created by the UN, which was then propagated by the World Economic Forum. And now BlackRock and Larry Fink and all these big CEOs have implemented ESG into their corporate guidance in terms of whether or not they'll invest in your corporation. So even if this marketing ploy is not profitable, they are still essentially coercing corporations to go along with it, because if they don't, they will not be able to get funding. They will not be able to get their stocks bought by the BlackRock that has over $10 trillion under management. That is a huge lever for control. And until people understand that, they don't really understand why these corporations are doing things that ultimately appear to damage their bottom line. And this is like the skeleton key that I discovered a couple months ago when I finally realized how it was happening. And that's the how. I mean, it is ESG, and that is the mechanism for coercing these CEOs that, as you said, are not really woke people into acting as if they are extraordinarily woke to the point of destroying their own businesses. So we have to remedy that. I mean, we have to find a way to make some sort of countervailing mechanism for assessing businesses. Instead of ESG, make it, LF something. Liberty and freedom metric, where we get to measure if they're actually supporting our human rights in terms of speech and things like that. I think that's probably the next frontier, but people aren't really ready to talk about it because they're just wrapping their head around the old problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I see a lot of promise in agorism, working outside some of these systems.
Sure.
Building our own systems, because if I don't see how we could peacefully act inside some of these systems that are rigged to not act peacefully.
Oh yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm pretty good friends with Jeremy Kauffman now, who's the creator of, I forget the underlying technology, but Odyssey, which is a competitor to YouTube, essentially a decentralized technology. I mean, these are the types of things that we need desperately. And I'm so grateful to know him. And I'm so grateful that he's given us that, that incredible blessing to have an option. So yeah, we're doing it. I mean, we're working our way in that direction, but it's just like, it's a race, man. It's a race to start to use these technologies and get off of the old. And at this point, the old guard still has the most eyeballs and ears, and we have to play the game to some extent. But I think it's really important that you step, you keep one foot in the new tech, the decentralized tech, so that you can help propel that and ultimately collapse the old guard.
Well, and that's one reason why I still vote, is because do I really think that voting, at least on a national level, is really going to change anything? No. but it is on paper that I'm not going with the legacy parties.
Right.
And that's what matters. So
I think so
no matter
too.
what, I'm not going to give that up.
Yeah, I hate it when the anarchists that say, you know, if you vote, you condone everything that's happening. It's like, okay, well, I have voted against every single politician that has ruled over me my entire life. Can you possibly say that I am responsible for what's happening when I have voted against them? Like,
Yeah.
no, it's obviously nonsense. So I don't care if you vote. You don't have to, but I just think it's really weird when you get mad at people who are voting for, you know, Ron Paul, or if we're blessed enough to have an opportunity to vote for Dave Smith. Like, I think you're crazy if you don't vote for him. Like,
Yeah.
give it a shot at least. Like, let the world know that people that are espousing these ideas have support. You know, we may not be highly visible because we're suppressed on the YouTube algorithm and we're suppressed on Twitter and we're suppressed everywhere else, but we exist and they can't hide that. I mean, maybe they can eventually, but at this point, I think they're still counting the libertarian votes because we're not a threat. So you might as well cast it. I'm not saying you have to vote for some milquetoast garbage libertarian, but if you get a real opportunity to vote for someone who really represents your values, you might as well. I mean, that's my perspective on it.
Well, it's the idea of redundancies, right? Like, why give up one weapon? You know, it might not be a good weapon. It might be an outdated weapon, but we still got a weapon. So there's no reason not to be able to use it and have it. And,
yeah, like if you only have a knife and you're in a gunfight, are you going to throw the knife down, or are you going to at least try and pretend as if you're a danger? It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm going to try.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, this is going to end badly, but I'm not giving it up. So, yeah, it's never made sense to me either. It's because I get a lot of blowback from that occasionally too. I've even gotten blowback from being involved in the LP in general, and it's like, you know, I'm chair of my county affiliate, and you know, I'm aiming to be a delegate for national, and you know, being involved with the Mises. Oh yeah, I'll definitely be down there. Me and the wife will be. So yeah, it'll be fun. You know, it's going to be hopefully only a voting battleground. You know.
So. Yeah, I hope so too. Jesus Christ, if it gets crazy, that'd be tragic. But I don't think it will. I'll tell you, I have a lot of haters, and everywhere I go, I get, you know, hugs and handshakes and, you know, nice to meet you. So I think it's all overblown. It's all Twitter worry or nonsense. I don't think any of these people are actually on that level, and I'm glad, because I'm not on that level. Like, I don't view these people as my enemy. Like, my enemy is the state. You know, my enemy is the people that are actually have power over me, and y'all don't have power over me, just like I don't have power over you. So just relax.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's been my attitude towards this whole thing, is like, look, we need to work together, because this is what they want. They want the classic divide and conquer. It's like the oldest maneuver in human history. How can you not see this? And
I don't know. I don't know how they can't see it.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's, you know, obviously I don't want anyone to leave the party. I want this party to grow. Sure. So as I see, you know, from some of the convention coverage, some of these people quitting the party or resigning their positions, and it's like, why? Like, I mean, if you feel that strongly, go. But
yeah, no, I view it a little differently. I mean, if you're just someone who prioritizes things differently, but ultimately is a libertarian, I agree with you. I have no interest in seeing them go. The people that are, you know, there are anti-capitalist people, there are anti-free market people, there are, you know, pro-sanctions people, there are pro-war people. Like, I don't have any problem with those people leaving. I'm just being totally honest. Like, those are core libertarian values that I think that, you know, if you don't see the world that way, this probably isn't the party for you. I think that's a very small minority of the people that are in the LP. And, you know, if I'd be happy to have an open dialogue with you. Again, I'm not forcing you out. I'm not begging you to leave. I'm just saying, I hope you will reconsider those perceptions or those views if you're going to be involved with this moving forward, because we don't have like an opportunity. We don't have enough time to deal with people that don't see this problem as clearly as many of us do. And it's not, I'm not trying to like, I'm not even trying to degrade these people. I'm not trying to make them feel bad. It's just that
just be better libertarians.
Yeah, the problem is bigger than that.
So how do you see a lot of the propaganda going along with Russia and Ukraine right now? Because I know it's pretty divided. I waited just a minute to be able to form my opinion to see what was going on.
Sure. Good idea.
It was it seemed cruel. Obviously, I'm anti-war, anti-invasion, but I'm also not too keen on supporting a country who, out of nowhere, the entire establishment supports. Just why?
Right. Well, yeah, and if you know the history of this, I mean, what Victoria Nuland did in 2014, working for the State Department and essentially cooing the guy in power and creating much of this situation that we are experiencing today. The U.S. government's been involved with this for a very long time. I mean, at least a decade. So I just think that it's a mistake to believe that there's a real good guy in this fight, at least on the governmental level. Obviously, I feel awful for the private individuals that are caught up amongst these warring powers, these warring governments. It's terrible. It's tragic. I mean, war is hell, and I am anti-war. So, like, it's obvious where my position is in that regard. But in terms of, American involvement, that is where I am voicing my opposition, because it doesn't really matter, what happens over there from the American perspective, unless America gets involved with this war and World War III starts, and that should be a siren call to all true libertarians in America that, like, yes, is the Russia-Ukraine war bad? Yes. Is World War III worse? Obviously. I don't know why I have to even make this argument, but apparently the propaganda works well enough that even some libertarians get shook, that they go, oh, I have to stand with Ukraine and all this nonsense. It's like, look, you can stand with the people of Ukraine. You can stand with the people of Russia. I get it. But just realize that you're being played. You are being used to try and lend support to the military industrial complex that exists in the United States to start World War III. And I will not do that. I will absolutely work tirelessly to make sure that doesn't happen, because nuclear conflict is not something we walk back from. I mean, it is an end game that we must avoid at all costs. And any person that's claiming to be a libertarian that isn't making that their priority in this moment, I think, is a fraud or so ignorant to what they're doing. They are a danger to all of human existence. So that's a serious, it's a serious claim to make, but I believe it strongly.
I had really serious concern here in the state of Utah. Obviously, that there was a rally behind Ukraine and everything, which, okay, fine. My concern started coming in when we started flying the Ukrainian flag from our state capital. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a whole different level. And then you've got, you've got that level all the way down to, protests happening, and then all the way up to, the Dawn, Hillary Clinton herself, supporting Ukraine. And I'm like, you don't see the connection there. There was actually a man, because we had just had a House bill go through to block vaccine passports here in the state. I don't know. That's a different discussion. However, the man had worn a Betsy Ross flag hat and a T-shirt that said "We the people." And while the security in the House chambers wore Ukrainian, pro-Ukrainian garb, that man was actually removed from the House chambers. And I just thought, wow, this is too much. We're flying the flag. We can't even wear pro-America stuff inside the House chambers. This is really concerning at this point.
Yeah, well, and I'm not a big nationalist patriot type person, but
Me either.
But I am far more concerned about globalism than I am nationalism. You know,
Yeah.
because that's basically what we're dealing with is like a communo-fascist organization. Like they believe in technocracy, the combination of big business and big government, but global government. So it is fascism used to have this aspect of nationalism to it, which is bad in its own right.
Yeah.
But then you take fascism and you make it global government, and it's like, oh well, there's no escape now. Like that's obviously worse. Just like I said the Ukraine-Russian war is bad. Well, World War III is worse.
Yeah.
Well, fascism is bad. Communal-fascism is worse. And I don't know why this is controversial to talk about it like that, but it's just the truth. So yes, I'm very concerned about the fact that we are basically all of the worst people in politics. You have Adam Kinzinger and Mitch McConnell. It's a bipartisan affair of people stand with Ukraine, arm the Ukrainians, give them whatever they want, no fly zone, all this stuff. And it's like, if you think that you're on the right side of history when you have scumbags like that talking about stuff like that, I don't know what you're paying attention to. Like this is it's obviously a racket. It's obviously meant to get us into a hot conflict with Russia. And I'm just any libertarian out there, we need you now more than ever. Like as bad as lockdowns were and as hard as I implored everybody to speak out, this is bigger than that even. I mean, it is bigger than lockdowns. It is bigger than the COVID hysteria. World War III is just absolutely the last thing we can allow to happen.
Yeah. So what do you think was the cause? Because I mean, this seems, it pretty much came like overnight, it seemed like. So we went from, the collapse of the COVID narrative, and now it's all focused on Ukraine. What was the big change? Like, is the propaganda really that good?
Yes. I think it is. I think it is. And I think that the truth was coming out about the nature of the forced injections and medical treatment that we were receiving. And it just happened to coincide perfectly with all of this stuff. And, honestly, I'm not saying that like Russia invaded to cover up the COVID misdeeds. I think that probably happened because we constantly prodded them for 15 years to do this. and then when it happened, because I mean, perfect example is like Russia also invaded Georgia, I don't know when it was, but 10 years ago or whatever, or 8 years, whatever it is. And you didn't get this kind of coverage. You didn't get calls for like World War III flippantly and nuclear deterrence and all this stuff. Like they are using this, whether they created it or not, intentionally or not, they are using it now intentionally to obfuscate the truth about what they just put us through over the past 2 years. I am very confident of that. So yeah, I mean, you got to keep your eye on the ball. Like Fauci, who ruined our fucking lives for the past 2 years.
Where is he,
now
by the way?
MIA. Yeah, exactly. He's MIA. And now you have Dr. Leanna Wen and all these scumbags that were like literally calling for, basically the imprisonment of people that refuse the jab, are now flipping and going, we don't need masks on kids. Well, I never said that. Oh, we don't need masks here. We don't need forced vaccination. Sure, we shouldn't fire people. Like the shift, and she's also a World Economic Forum young leader. Keep that in mind. So yeah, it's like, keep your eye on the ball. Like this is so transparent what they're doing to us, and I pray that we can hold on to the truth of the narrative and kind of push aside this obvious psyop that we're experiencing. It's crazy. It makes me feel crazy because I'm one of the only people that sees it, but it's so obvious to me that it's like I just have to hold on to my sanity with everything I can.
Right. So have you been paying attention to the Pfizer documents that have been slowly coming out?
Sure, a little bit. I haven't read them all, but yeah, I've definitely seen some reporting on it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. These same documents that Pfizer themselves wanted to wait 75 years to be able to release are now being forced to release them, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 pages at a time. And there's just no coverage. Nobody's talking. You know, you've got Robert Malone covering it, and Peter McCullough, doctors like this who are being censored. But
right, all the people that were already blacklisted are the only ones that are still covering this stuff. I mean, that's the issue. I mean, that is the whole truth of it, is that they lied to us and people died. A lot of people died, and there has to be payback for that. You know, there has to be repercussions, and I think that so far they've done a very good job of distracting the American people from the truth of that, and now getting them caught up in some sort of, you know, Russia scare. And I don't know, man. If we don't have repercussions for the people that ruined our lives for the past 2 years, they'll do it again. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Like these people must receive some level of punishment. I hope through the criminal justice system. But if they don't, which they probably won't, well, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, you're going to have really radicalized people that had their lives ruined. You're going to create the domestic extremists that don't even exist. You're going to create them because you've ignored their pleas for help for years, and then you gaslit them, you called them crazy, and now you're immediately shifting it to, you know, World War III and all this other nonsense. And it's like, well, these people are going to be dangerous at some point. And that's kind of been the job of my show, was to try and bring light and bring voice to these people, and try and let them know they're not alone and they're not crazy. And it's heartbreaking to me that they're now kind of being left to the dustbin of history as we move on to the next bullshit crisis. It's tragic.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I enjoy still talking about a lot of these things, because 2 years, that was a lot of shit that they put everyone through for 2 years.
Immense.
And I just, you know, I'm not too emotional of a guy, but I started thinking of all the family businesses that had to close down and are never coming back. And gets me a little misty eyed, you know.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I am kind of one of those businesses. I'm not a family business. It's just me, but still, you know, that's the reason I did my show, is that I wanted people to know, you know, there are people out there like you that feel your pain, that understand what you're going through in a real sense. And, you know, you're not going to get coverage like that from CNN or any of these people. Like, they don't understand the pain. They don't understand the struggle, the blood, sweat, and tears you put into that business getting off the ground, and then to have, for no reason at all, to have it ripped away from you. Mm-hmm. And then to have bailout bills to big business while you're locked down, you struggle to get any sort of governmental assistance. I mean, it is injustice by definition. And those people need justice. Like, that's what I fight for, is I want those people's voices to be heard, and the people that didn't listen to them and sacrificed them on the altar of science TM. I want them to pay a price, man. They've got to. They just have to. Yeah,
we definitely need our day in court, you know, because what happened was so incredibly wrong on so many levels. I mean, if there's any justice in the world, it will happen.
Let's hope there's some justice left in the world. I don't know.
Yeah. Another reason I got involved with the LP, though, you know,
sure,
it might not be the best solution, but it's a solution, and work towards something and make sure it's peaceful. You know, that's my big thing.
That's my whole goal too. And I think that ultimately peaceful secession is almost certainly going to be what has to happen if we're to find a peaceful resolution to this, because I don't believe that the people responsible for the past 2 years will be held to account. And if that's the case, the only peaceful solution is peaceful secession. Like, you have to let us go. Like, if you're going to rule over us with tyranny and treat us like we're slaves, at some point there is a breaking point. And like, the only option, if you're not going to hold these people to account, the only option is to let us go. So I don't care what it is, to be honest. Like, I'm not some, you know, radical that demands secession. I just want there to be justice. And if there is no justice, then I have no interest in being a part of your nation. I mean, it's really that simple. So we'll find out. We'll find out how they want to play it.
I mean, I'm definitely pro secession. I mean, that's our founding fathers succeeded from the British government. this entire American experiment was founded on secession.
Oh yeah.
And
No,
and
I'm
the
not.
ability to. So
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying like
yeah.
I would be okay with keeping the union together if there could be serious reform and serious, justice
Agreed.
being applied to these people. But because I think that's unlikely, or almost impossible, then I think that peaceful secession is ultimately the best solution. I'm just saying
Yeah.
I'm not like some hardliner where, well, if you were to hold these people to account, I'd still want to secede. Like, sure, I'd probably prefer it, but I'd be. It's like you have to hold these people to account.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then you have to let me go. Like it's an A or B
Yeah.
option.
I was and still am genuinely surprised the LGBT community rallied so hard behind Fauci. I mean, he was responsible for so many people in the LGBT community dying
I know.
in the 80s, releasing all these AIDS drugs, knowingly hurting people.
Yep.
It just shocked me. I was just blown away.
I think this is the problem with not just the LGBT community, but just people in America in general and probably globally. They're just super indoctrinated, man. Like they aren't critical thinkers. They have the memory of a goldfish. They don't remember all the injustice that they've experienced. And, granted that was 30, 40 years ago. So many of them are gone. And obviously a lot of the victims of Fauci are gone.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but I'm glad that there are some people that see it for what it is. And I hope that even with the suppression of people that identify these issues, I hope that our voices are getting out there and that people are starting to realize like there is truth to what's happening and it's okay to listen to it. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to try and keep that message alive. Like don't allow the cult mentality of wokeness and going along with whatever Fauci says or going along with whatever the politicians today say about Ukraine and Russia and how Putin is the most evil human being, more evil than Hitler, which is unbelievable. Just keep telling the truth.
I don't know about that one. Worse than Hitler.
I do know about that one. It's not true. It's not true.
It's such a trope now. I don't even know. It's overplayed. The children who cried wolf.
Yeah.
At this point, we're closer to Mussolini in a lot of aspects than Hitler.
For sure.
And he would definitely be jealous of our system right now. That's for sure.
Hell yeah. I mean, the real crazy thing about our system is that while we have totalitarianism and we have incredible propaganda tools, they have managed to convince the people that they're still free. I mean, I think a lot of people in Germany didn't have any preconceived notions about them being free. It was like they understood what was happening to them. That's the scary thing, is that while we exist in a system that is inching ever closer to being as egregiously evil as some of the worst regimes in history, we have the vast majority of people thinking that they're free. That's crazy. I mean, that is our job, is to let people know, like, this is not free. This is not liberty. So until we do that, I don't think we're going to get any sort of populist uprising to remedy it. But a lot of people are waking up, and I'm not without hope. It's just, man, I hope more people wake up and do it faster.
Yeah. It's definitely hard to balance that white and black pill.
It is.
But
very.
We've got a lot of really good liberty-minded people doing a lot of good things, and ultimately, I'm white-pilled. So, and we'll wrap this up here. I won't keep it too long.
Sure.
But what do you think the ultimate recipe? And of course, this is hard to generalize across everyone, being an individualist. But what the ultimate recipe is for the liberty movement moving forward?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't know what the ultimate recipe is. I don't know what assures us victory. A lot has to do with how our opponents respond, how the government responds to what we're doing. And so we're going to have to be adaptive. I mean, the reason I'm optimistic is because we are a decentralized, individualist-based organization. and they are a top-down, bureaucratic, slow-moving organization. So we have that as our advantage, guerrilla warfare type tactics, but not violent, but in terms of tactics is the reason that we have an advantage at all, and we have to capitalize on that. We have to use the strengths that we have and find ways to get our messaging out there to wake people up in a powerful and urgent fashion, and try and bolster our numbers while we still have the opportunity to speak to as many people as we do currently. And I think if we do that, there's a real chance that we can stem the tide of totalitarianism that we've been experiencing. But it's not a singular answer. Like, we need everybody pushing as aggressively as possible in their own way. Like, I want people, if you think that local activism is your best asset, that's what you're best at, that's what I want you to be doing. If you're the best at speaking to tens of thousands of people, that's what I want you to be doing. If you're the best at running for politics on a national level, that's what I want you to be doing. Like, I don't have any interest in telling people, you should just be starting a podcast and screaming like I do. No. Like, if you're best at a local level, if you have stage fright, if you don't have a way with words, whatever, like, focus on what you're good at. And I think that gives the same reason I believe in the free market. It's the same principle here. It's like, do what you're best at, and I think that'll give us the best chance of succeeding.
Well
and
said.
Succeeding.
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely a couple of weak points I think I see within the liberty movement, and that's more culture-based things, more music, artwork, books, poetry. There's movies, that sort of thing, and of course that is slowly changing, and it's a lot to build up to when we're working against such a massive culture system that's already built against us. Mm-hmm. But those are definitely we need more freedom-based artists. Yes. I would love to see more.
Well, and there are a handful out there. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Eric July and his work, his music. And he's trying to get in the comic book realm. I think that these are things that a lot of people poo-poo, and they go, "Oh, that doesn't change anything." It's like, it changes a lot, man. Like, it changes a lot when young men in particular are able to find a comic book that is speaking to them and about the problems that they're experiencing, and that and it does it in a non-woke fashion. I think that's powerful. I think that allows us to still hold on to some of the true liberal ideas that we had in the 90s and early 2000s. And ultimately, like, the culture war is what we've already lost terribly. So this is our way of battling back. And fortunately, the arc of history tends to swing, and I think that it'll swing back in our direction. So we just have to try and guide it in a direction that is as beneficial to us as possible. But I completely agree with you. If you're like I said, if you're best at being a musician, that should be your focus. You should be writing powerful, liberty-minded hymns, like the stuff that fires people up, that gets their juices flowing. Like, that's what I'm all about, man. And I think that you're right. We don't have enough of it, but we do have some, and support those people. And if you have it in you to do that, then go do it, man. Like, whatever it is, whatever you're best at, just go.
Yeah. I mean, just keep trying something, keep throwing stuff at the wall until something sticks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just who would have known that a mortgage broker screaming into a microphone would have appeal? I didn't know that. But I gave it a shot, and people seem to enjoy it, and I got a quick following, and now I'm able to tour the country and talk to thousands of people in person. Like, this is going to be an amazing experience. So I'm not some singular phenomenon. Like, a lot of people could do this. So I'm not saying you could actually do exactly what I did, but you can do some version of your own hero's journey. So that's what I'd like to see people doing, is pursue it, pursue it with passion, pursue it with some level of desperation. Like, this is what you need to see happen in the world, and you're going to go make it. You're going to, don't wait for people to go fucking fix all of your problems. Like, that's what I did for too much of my life. And 2 years ago, I decided, or not even 2 years ago now, 2 years ago, approximately, I decided I'm going to do something about the problems I see in the world. And sure, a lot of people could say, "Oh, so you talking to a microphone? It doesn't change anything." Bullshit. That's bullshit. Joe Rogan has changed the fucking world.
Yeah.
He has absolutely changed the world. Dave Smith is changing the world. And sure, maybe I only get 10,000 listeners per episode or something. And you may say, "Oh, that's not enough to change the world." Well, those 10,000 people could go on to be, the Dave Smiths and the Ron Pauls of the world. Who knows what it creates? So it's just about creating and getting away from the destruction of the government.
Yeah, exactly. Promoting that peaceful lifestyle that we all deserve, that we're all entitled to. One of the few things in this life that I truly believe that we are actually entitled to is an actual peaceful life.
Well, we're entitled to it, but not without a fight. So let's
true.
fight too.
Well, that's true. So, well, let everyone know where they can find you and everything.
Sure. At Liberty Lock Pod on Twitter, Liberty Lockdown on Instagram. The show itself is on YouTube. You can just search Liberty Lockdown. It's on obviously Odyssey and all the alt platforms. And if you want to check out the podcast, it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere else. Just search Liberty Lockdown and please subscribe. If you like it, share it. I think that's the key. Is like word of mouth is really how all of this has happened. I've never done any outside marketing. I've just basically used my Twitter account and my podcast, and then my own efforts going on to other shows to try and get people to know about me, to know about what I'm about. And I'm very grateful that so many people seem to vibe with what I'm about. So if you feel me, join me.
Yeah, I definitely get a kick out of your show. Like I said, been a fan for a long time. So
awesome, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the time, Jacob.
Yeah, anytime. And make sure and check out risetoliberty.store for any merch. Got some pretty cool t-shirts over there. risetoliberty.com/free speech for as long as the Telegram lasts, and risetoliberty.com/links for everywhere else you can find the show, and all the other goodies we have out on the internet. Well, it was definitely a blast having you on, and we'll definitely have you on again, and we'll see you in Reno.
Awesome, man. Support Jacob, support Rise to Liberty podcast, and rise to fucking liberty, folks. Let's go.
Yep. Later, guys.